everyone! So my name is Lily and I'm the book blogger behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm going to be sharing with you all of my 5-star fantasy reads of 2020. This is going to be the longest video in the 5-star read series, so grab yourself a drink or a snack and let's get into it. So I'm going to be using this little printout sheet as reference because there are a lot of books. There are 22 books that I need to cover and we need to go a little bit quickly. I don't want this video to drag out super long. I'm going to start off with the adult fantasy section. This has 8 different 5-star reads. So the first one that I want to talk about is Empress of Salt and Fortune. I actually have a lot of novellas on the 5-star list, and this is the first one I read in 2020 that I really loved. I would like all of the bard stories ever. It's one of my favorite characters in fantasy, the bard character, and the idea of keeping a track of the history and the idea of oral history is really fascinating to me, and so I love all bard characters. And I also really loved that this novella was super queer and it was just really fascinating, and yeah, I was kind of transported almost instantly and I really loved it. The next one is The Obsidian Tower. This is a queer political fantasy and it has a lot of political manipulation, and there's a bunch of family obligations and forbidden truths. And basically, if you ever saw those things where do not touch, this fantasy has this premise where there's this door where you're not allowed to go into. And of course, what's gonna happen with that? So The Obsidian Tower is this really great political fantasy, and it's the beginning of a series. So if you really like it, like I do, then you can kind of keep track of the series as it goes along. The next one is the only one that I actually have physically. It's The City We Became. I'm a huge fan of N.K. Jemisin in general, and so I was super looking forward to The City We Became when it came out, and I was able to read it this year. Sometimes I don't get to releases in the year they release, so I was able to get to this, and it just makes New York City come alive. And I've spent a bunch of time in New York City, and it was just really great to watch the neighborhoods and the cities come alive. And it's one of the reasons why I love New York City is that feeling of coming alive that I get. In general, I just love the world building nugget. That's kind of a term I use in the inside of my head, so I'm bringing it out for this video. I love the world building nugget, the idea of cities coming alive and kind of fights for allegiances and control of these magical cities. And this series in general just has so much potential for the future that I'm so excited to see. And yeah, N.K. Jemisin's writing was really fabulous. So it was instant. I knew it was going to be a hit, and then it was. The next pick is When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. This is actually the series sequel to Empress of Salt and Fortune. So again, bards, but it also has mammoths. So it's everything I really love. But I guess also what I loved is that thematically, When the Tiger Comes Down the Mountain has this idea about stories and this idea about two sides of a story, and why it's so important to investigate the sides of a story and to make sure that the history is incorporating both of them, and specifically a bard's role in that. The next pick is Black Sun. I've been a fan of Rebecca Roanhorse's work in the past. I really liked the Trail of Lightning series, and so I was really excited for Black Sun, and I listened to an audiobook from Libro FM. And what I loved was that there's this constant kind of plot crescendo as it moves up, and I never kind of felt like there was a lull. For me, it's also such a great example of excellent multiple perspective, and how the past interweave, and how this kind of sense of destiny is about character destiny and then kind of the world and plot density. So that was really fabulous, and it's just in such an immersive world. Again, the beginning of a series, I'm very excited to see how it goes along. The next novella is Remote Control, and for me, the world building of this ultra technological world meets this woman, or the perspective changes as she grows older, so meets this character which can't really use technology, and what that means for her to exist in this world. And it's also about just a girl who's also really feared, and how her history and her life has become a legacy. And also it also has this emotional core where you don't fit into this world, and so how do you kind of navigate your own sense of self in this kind of growing world. The The next one is The Burning God. I don't really have any words for how much I loved The Burning God. The series, it's the series ender to the Poppy War trilogy. Poppy War trilogy is one of my favorite book series ever. The Burning God was just such a fitting, and it just felt so right, and there were no excuses and no easy way outs, and I just loved how we've been able to see the characters and the world grow with each successive book. And as I said, just the ending felt so right, and it made me hurt so much, but like in a good way. And then the final one is The House in the Cerulean Sea. Everyone told me that I was gonna love it, and I did love it. It's basically, the side characters are just so precious, and all of the orphans in it are just so quirky and detailed as well. All of the characters are so detailed in this book, and so it makes it so easy to kind of fall in love with them and understand them and really relate to them. So that's why I really loved The House in the Cerulean Sea. It has really great characters, and also has a really wonderful found family and a notion of home and what it means to be home and to find home. Now I'm going to talk about why fantasies I really liked. As I was counting, I realized that there's actually more than 22 books on this list, because in my original count I had organized them by series enders and by fantasy, so that's why there are more, because there are a lot of the series enders I read were fantasy. The first I want to talk about is Wicked As You Wish. I've loved Rin Chupeca's work so much. I read all of their books except for the horror books because I am a big scaredy cat. But Wicked As You Wish was just so, the world building was so fresh and snappy, and I loved how funny and how wry and like witty Rin was able to be in this book, and how witty and wry the characters are. It's a side of the character work that Rin has done that I have never really seen, because the Bone Witch is kind of more serious toned. The prose is more serious toned. And so in Wicked As You Wish, there was just so much fun and so much like lightheartedness to the book, while also being a book about past mistakes and about family as well. The next is Thorn. I really, if you'll see in my list of fantasies, I am a huge fan of retellings, and I'm a huge fan of unconventional retellings. And so Thorn is a Goose Girl retelling, which immediately piqued my interest. But secondly, it all really asks who we want to be. Are we going to be the person that we thought we were, or going to take on this new responsibility and this new role, and what does that kind of do to who we are? And the journey about finding that out was so much part of Thorn that I really loved that. The next book is Where Dreams Descend, which is just all the ambitious girls. That's another theme of my 2020, wanting to read about all the ambitious girls. And she's trying to be a magician in a society where women are only assistants and kind of apprentices to magicians. They're not actually the magicians. So her journey is not only one of ambition and to kind of be recognized for her power, it is also for her to kind of make peace with her past, and actually maybe make peace is the wrong word for it, but to at least confront her past as well. There is so much atmosphere oozing out of this book, and it was just so lush and descriptive, and so I'm so excited for the sequel. The next book is The Archer at Dawn. In general, I feel like as a series goes on, I end up loving the sequels even more, and I think this makes sense because you can see how the characters and the world develop, and that's certainly the case how it was for The Archer at Dawn for me. I felt like the characters in The Archer at Dawn were really given time to kind of reckon with what happened in The Tiger at Midnight and kind of decide who they want to be now. And in this time where, you know, things in the world and things of themselves are changing, what kind of version of themselves do they want to be? And what will they change into, and like will their relationships with people and the world change as this grows and develops? The next book is The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea. It was one of my favorite books because there's such clever writing, and I remember when I was reading like the third part of the book, I was just so in awe of the way that the writing kind of came together and the themes, and also specifically the title. I remember when I figured out like how the title featured into the book, I was just kind of, I needed a moment to think and like fully sink in. I loved this queer romance and fantasy. It's about fighting for our future. There's like pirate kind of sea adventures, and there's also adventures about kind of figuring out how we can fight for the future we want and to challenge what we thought we wanted. The next book is A Song Below Water. I really loved this one, and I thought I was gonna love it, and then I read it and it was just like solidified how much I loved it. I love this urban fantasy about Black girls being silenced it almost feels dystopian in a way because of the things that are happening, but also at the same time feels almost too realistic. So I loved how Mara was able to merge those ideas of what's happening in our world today and also giving it like a fantasy tweak, but also making it so that while we see this as fantasy, we can also see directly the ways that it's connected to our world. And so I loved that thematically, and also the action was just there. And considering how considering how this year was, I felt like A Song Below Water was very, very on par for the world, and like the conversations about Black girls being silenced and about protests and about being judged for the potential of what we could do before we even do anything. I've gone on and on about how much I love these violent delights. I don't even really know what to say anymore. I love this setting so much. I love how it talks about imperialism, and it talks about like the future, and it talks about our idea of home and what it means to kind of leave home and also to return home. It's a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but it's so much more than just a retelling because it has all these elements in like a fantastical kind of setting. And yeah, I love this book so much. I don't even know like how else to describe how much I love this book. So if you haven't picked it up yet, just know that I love it. The next book is Lobizzona, and I loved how it talks about the tagline, so undocumented, unprotected, unafraid. It talks about how our existence can be illegal and what that means, and immigration, but at the same time it also has this magical school kind of setting, and also takes down gender norms and gender stereotypes. So like Lobizzona has so much in it, and so much more than I thought from just like what I had heard about it. I knew that it was going to be a book about immigration where your existence is illegal, but then it kind of switched as well to another added layer, and so I was kind of shocked but also so happy about it. The next book is Star Daughter. I loved the idea of like a family talent kind of competition. So it's not a family talent competition, it's just a talent competition. But the main character is really able to get in touch with her family and also the secrets. And so it's a ton about drama, and it also a huge amount about family and kind of coming to terms with what our family has done, and all of those like really complex, gritty relationships involved with it. The next book is Never Look Back. It's an Orpheus retelling, so again, I love clever retellings, and for me, Never Look Back was just so fabulous because it tackles toxic relationships, and I also loved how well absorbed and also how interwoven the aspects of the retelling was in the actual book. So it was just so fabulous, and it was lyrical, and the plot and the writing just worked so well together to make it kind of feel, it's fantastical, but it also felt just so kind of like you're being lulled on the ocean, and like there are moments where it's lulling and you want to kind of just sink into it, but also moments of storms and turbulence. That's all I can really use to describe it. The next book has to be Cemetery Boys. I really loved the atmosphere and the magic, and it's about a struggle to be seen and to feel like you're accepted and to fight for your existence, but also it's like the romance in it is so beautiful and it's so queer, and so it just felt like one of those books that kind of checked all of the boxes for me in a way that just felt so satisfying to have these balances of magic and family and a struggle for acceptance, but also romance and friendship, like all wrapped into one. Miss Meteor has to be one of my favorite books of 2020. It features some of my favorite authors ever, the fantastic favorite author duo, like I think about in my mind. But it also was just so lyrical, and the writing just was so comprehensive, and it also just felt like it would kind of sweep you away. And I also loved how, specifically in Miss Meteor, they use the idea of aliens, because there is this kind of supernatural, fantastical element to talk about immigration, and also to talk about identity and like how people view you as alien, not necessarily as an alien, but that's kind of the way that it plays. And so that was just so clever, and then also the plot and the way that it looks at family and sisterhood and fighting against the norm and against what people expect was just really fabulous. The Deathless Divide, I have really loved zombie books. I don't read enough zombie books, so if you have any recommendations, please leave them below, because I really love zombie books, and I love how Deathless Divide looks at zombies and also privilege and racism, because I think that it's an optimistic idea to assume that if there were zombies, everyone just be like, okay, no more racism, like, we got these zombies to worry about. And the Deathless Divide just kind of proves that those kinds of deep-seated injustice and systemic inequality just don't go away because there are zombies. So if you love the idea of zombies and what I'm talking about, definitely check this out. In Deathless Divide, there's also the addition of the queer main character. It's dual perspective, and it's been so long since I read Dread Nation that I don't remember if that was also the case in Dread Nation, but I really loved how we were able to see an added perspective in Deathless Divide. The next one is The Shadow of Kyoshi, and I loved how sapphic it is. Literally on my notes, I have in quotation marks all the sapphicness. That was one of my favorite elements for sure, and also one of the reasons why I was really drawn to this series in general. But what I also loved is how The Shadow of Kyoshi talks about putting the past to rest, and kind of how do we want to become a leader, and like how do we not let what other people have done in the past hold us back? How do we determine and develop who we want to be? And then also how the past can return with a vengeance, and what do we do about it? The Ever Cruel Kingdom was one of my favorite series enders this year as well. It talks about rewriting our story and breaking these cycles of behavior, and how can we like fight for a future that would upset the status quo in a way that it needs to be. It also has such great relationships, and the sister relationships as well, but also the romantic relationships and all the queerness, and I just loved it so much, and the ending like made me shed a tear basically. Beyond the Ruby Veil was for sure one of my favorites, because if you've ever read a book where the hero is so into sacrificing themselves and is like, oh, I'm super noble and I'm gonna sacrifice myself and it's gonna be okay because it's for the good of everyone else. This is not like that book. It is instead this queer book about an ambitious girl who is not afraid to sacrifice, and not afraid to make compromises, and not afraid of a little or a lot of blood. So if that's what you like, then definitely check this out. For me, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air, because I'd read a bunch of books where like is that kind of character, and no shade, I do like that kind of character, but it was super refreshing to see Emanuela in this book kind of be like, well, you know, stuff happens and I'm still on the path to where I want to be, and I'm committed to pursuing the truth no matter what it costs. So if you really like that idea, definitely read Beyond the Ruby Veil. So the next couple ones also are series enders. The first is The Faithless Hawk. This is the series ender to The Merciful Crow. I've loved the idea of bone magic, and I have also loved the idea of like, I think The Bone Witch also talks about this in a really great way, being one of those necessary forces in this world that people revile, but also that they like, you're called on when they need you, and then as soon as they don't need you, or even as soon as they need you, they treat you like dirt. So that was kind of what I loved about this world building. But in The Faithless Hawk, it's such a great sequel because it also talks about what will we sacrifice for our goals, and when we have power, what will we do with this power. I've loved the Queen of Vaults world building because I just love the idea of like the magic of vaults and like the magic of electricity essentially. And so I love that unique world building, and the Queen of Vaults series ender just talks so much about past mistakes and all these protections disguised as betrayals, and there's all this yearning twisted by desire and regret, and like so much emotions. And for me, the Queen of Vaults just kind of is summed up by this idea of how do we really move past all of the things that we've done? How can we really move forward in the future? Like, is it really just too many things that have happened? Too much betrayal? Like, can we really envision a future where we get to live, maybe not happily ever after, but like live happily or live contentedly, right? Because I know that a lot of series, you know, you're always searching for that. But like when you have the options and when you have the ability to do so, how do we actually do that? The Skybound Saga is one of my favorite queer fantasies. I just love it so much. Killer birds, I mean, like that's just the 2 words and I was already hooked. Goldwing's Rising tackles questions of power and struggles of breaking the cycles of the past. And are we the choices that we make? Are we trained to make these choices and tamed in a sense? And so how do we figure out what we really want to do, what we want to do for the good of, you know, the society? It has so much thematic kind of gold Gold Wings Rising. So much thematic gold in the series and in this series ender, and I just was so swept away by how much I loved Gold Wings Rising. I think I rated like all of the Skybound Saga 5 stars, so I kind of assumed that that would be the case for Gold Wings Rising, but it's just, you know, it's satisfying to see and to do and to know that you were right. And the last one is The Gilded Ones. So for me, if you really loved the Old Guard comics or if you really loved the Old Guard film, this gives me Old Guard vibes real hard. And it's also about girls tackling the patriarchy and tackling gender storms, so gender stereotypes and gender norms smushed together. So it's about girls tackling those issues and about monstrous women and monstrous girls and how that affects their idea of femininity and also their identity as a whole. So that was all of my 2020 5-star fantasy reads. I have this pile right next to me. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you were able to add some of these to your TBR. This is just the first part of a series where I'm going to go through all of my 5-star reads of 2020, which there were over 100 of them. So if you're interested in knowing that, please stay tuned for this series because it's a lot. And I'm going to kind of be staggering the videos so it's not like 2 weeks worth of favorites. I'm going to be, you know, sprinkling them in, and I'm going to be breaking them up roughly by genre. So I hope you all had a really great time. I will leave all the links below, all the books mentioned, all of my links, all the links below, and I hope you were able to add some of these to your TBR. Let me know what your favorite fantasy book of 2020 was. It was impossible for me to pick 1 or even 5. So originally I thought about doing it, and then it felt wrong. It felt cruel. So anyway, I hope you have a really great day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!